sleep story. My name is Johnny Midnight, and it's my great privilege to be the voice you listen to as you drift off tonight. Tonight, I'll share a tale about a quiet girl with an extraordinary gift. I say little, but it was actually astonishingly enormous once you truly experienced its depth. Some called her Melody, but others, and by others, I mean only a very select few people in all of history, called her the girl who plays the flute. The dim lighting cast gentle shadows, making the brass of trumpets seem deeper, the strings of violins more resonant. Round Melody, the shop unfolded into a series of small rooms, each a secret chamber waiting to be discovered. Here, a cluster of wind chimes sang a calming tune, and funnily enough, just as she was thinking that it had been a while since she'd had a visitor, the little bell above the shop door tinkled, announcing the arrival of one such visitor. There, a group of delicate music boxes nestled together, their lids closed in peaceful slumber. As if dreaming, the door creaked open to reveal a small, old woman, her shawl damp from the evening mist, a whereupon scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. She studied the old woman for a moment, taking in her stooped shoulders and the restless lines etched on her face. "How did you hear about my harmonies?" she asked, her tone a mix of curiosity and caution. In her eyes, there was a look of determination, or perhaps restlessness, that spoke of someone in dire need of quiet. The walls were lined with shelves, each one filled with scrolls of sheet music in small, unplayed instruments of varying shapes and sizes. The air in this room was so resonant, the old lady felt instant calm just by being there. She told Melody that her little dog had been whimpering a lot lately, and because of this, hadn't been able to find quiet. She passed it to the woman, her eyes meeting hers. This time it was a young man, his clothes splattered with paint, his eyes alight with a creative fire. "I've heard you're some kind of a master of sound," the young artist said. "I need something to keep my inspiration flowing. The night is when my ideas come alive, when my best work comes to life, but my mind, it craves quiet, and I can't afford to lose the spark when it strikes." There was a part of him, a part that believed in the magic of creation, that wondered if perhaps this girl who plays the flute held the key to unlocking new depths in his art. "Thank you," he said, his voice carrying a new note of hope. As he turned to leave, drum in hand, he felt a lightness that he hadn't known in a long while. "The need for true quiet is something we all share," Melody told her, "even those who sometimes think they've risen above such earthly concerns. The mind, like a melody, needs time to resonate, to find its own quiet notes, to wander paths not found on any screen." This, she explained, handing her a set of delicate chimes with a gentle resonance that caught the light, perhaps, somewhere beneath the layers of cynicism and stress. She longed for the escape that Melody, the girl who plays the flute, offered for a night free from the glow of her screen and the weight of her responsibilities. "Thank you," she said, and for the first time since she entered, her words carried a hint of genuine gratitude. As she left the shop, chimes in hand, there was a pause in her step, a momentary hesitation that suggested she might just be ready to rediscover the restorative power of pure quiet. Is to help you disconnect, to remind your mind of the peace that comes from simply being present in silence. And resonant metal, Melody herself slept, surrounded by the gentle presence of her instruments, her constant friends. She slept the contented sleep of one who had spent her days in the service of others. Her dreams were simple reflections of the quiet joy she found in her daily and nightly communion with the world of sound and all of her friends, the instruments. The woman briefly looked at Melody. There was a flicker of something, exhaustion perhaps, or the faintest glimmer of recognition that her words held truth. The flute's melody had worked its magic, and for the first time in many nights, both she and her companion rested deeply. In her dreams, she walked through sunlit fields, her steps light, her heart unburdened by the noisy restlessness of sleepless nights. Perhaps tonight he would discover the true source of his creativity, nestled within the rhythms that awaited him. The drum's rhythm had guided him to a wonderful place where his imagination soared without bounds. Her phone lay forgotten, its screen dark, as she journeyed through a landscape of dreams, a landscape of peace and profound stillness. His dreams were vivid and were bringing a whole new element of life to his creative existence. He moved through the shop, his gaze darting around, taking in the gleaming instruments that filled the space. She appeared to be a businesswoman, her sharp attire and brisk manner marking her as someone more accustomed to the boardroom than a quaint musical shop. "I was told to come here," she said. "They said you could help me." She seemed lost and in need of silence. Even as she stepped inside, her eyes remained glued to the screen of her phone, fingers swiping incessantly. Melody observed her from her place among the instruments, noting the way she barely glanced at the gleaming brass and polished wood surrounding her. The woman sat down, still occasionally glancing at her phone, but the cozy room seemed to quiet her, and she began to notice what was around her. The beauty and calm of this place were starting to show her another path. She breathed in this moment, in and out. Her attention was captured entirely by the digital world in her hands. It was a scene she'd become all too familiar with, the modern melody of constant noise. There was an intensity to him, kind that comes from nights spent chasing the elusive perfection of art, from hours lost in the flow of creation. Take this, she said, and may it bring you the peace you seek. A little tune for your little dog as well. It won't do him any harm. But the countless others who have sought to push beyond their natural limits for the sake of their passion. You seek to bend the night to your will, Melody mused, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. But perhaps what you need is not to ward off quiet, but to find a balance that lets your creativity flourish without silencing your inner muse. The artist looked skeptical, but there was a part of him, perhaps the part worn down by restless thoughts, that was willing to listen. The woman accepted the flute, her hands trembling slightly with a mix of anticipation and gratitude. They stepped into the cozy room at the back, the same room where the old woman found her peace. But this time, Melody headed to a different set of shelves, her finger trailing over the instruments until they settled on a particular small drum. This, she said, holding out a tiny hand drum filled with a subtle resonance that seemed to pulse with its own. Rhythm is not to keep you awake, but to help you harness the power of your inner rhythm. Play this gently before you create, and let your mind wander the landscapes of your imagination. You may find that the rhythms you feel within fuel your artistry more than any forced wakefulness could. Thank you, she whispered, the words barely audible but heavy with meaning. She bid good night to Melody and left the little instrument shop. Melody nodded with kind understanding. It felt like these two were friends who had never met, and she felt very welcome and safe in the girl who plays the flute's shop. She moved slowly around the shop, her gaze lingering on the instruments that filled every nook and cranny. Beside it, a pair of comfortable chairs invited them to sit, to share in the ritual of the harmony preparation. Melody guided the woman to one of the chairs, offering her a seat with a kind smile. As she settled in, her eyes roamed the room, taking in the details, the way the lantern light flickered against the polished instruments, the gentle sound of the wind sighing outside, and the quiet reverence of the room, which added to the tranquility. Then you have indeed come to the right place, she said, leading her towards the back of the shop. With practiced hands, she selected what she needed, bringing them to the table where a small, delicate bamboo flute awaited. She worked silently, but with a sense of reverence for the task at hand, assembling, tuning, and preparing with a precision born of decades of experience. The old woman watched, mesmerized by the girl's meticulous process. There was a magic here, not just in the creation of her harmony, but in the care with which Melody handled each component, the respect she showed for the materials, and the process alike. The wooden door, plain and unassuming, stood before them. As they approached, Melody couldn't help but feel a stirring of something long dormant anticipation, perhaps, or the simple joy of sharing her gift. The old woman's presence, her belief in the stories of her grandmother, bridged the gap between past and present, reminding Melody of the deep, enduring power of her harmonies. Each one she passed seemed to hum faintly towards her, as if offering solace. Then there were the grander instruments, like the polished grand piano and various beautifully carved cellos, which created an almost orchestral atmosphere. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft but clear, carrying through the quiet shop. "I've come for the harmony," she said, the words hanging in the air between them like a secret long forgotten. "My grandmother told me when I was but a girl," she said. "She said there was a girl in an instrument shop who could play peace into your soul. I didn't believe her until now, until..." Her voice trailed off, but there was no need for her to finish. Melody understood all too well the toll of her unquiet mind. "Now that you have a little background, why don't we go and visit Melody?" Only those who knew what to ask for could enter this sacred place. But before she did, she simply stood in her little shop, closed her eyes, and breathed in this moment, breathing in the soft echoes of melodies around her, and breathing out any unwanted tension. Melody loved this place. She appreciated every moment spent here. The process of collecting the essence was a quiet ritual, a kind of dance of appreciation between the girl and her musical charges. Each step, from the gentle plucking of a string to the careful breath drawn across the flute's lip, was performed with a reverence that transformed the mundane into the magical. As she worked, surrounded by the instruments she loved, Melody felt a contentment that only came from knowing she was about to add a bit of magic into the world. Inside rare instruments, Melody's closest kept secrets thrived under her careful touch. A silver lyre released its sweet, silvery notes into the air. Beside it, an ancient carved drum stretched its vibrations into the silence. And along the walls, intricate string instruments climbed, their strings ready to be plucked and woven into one of the harmonies. You see, it appeared completely tiny and incredibly unassuming from the outside. She moved from instrument to instrument. The shop was dimly lit, and she felt utterly present and at one with the melodies she coaxed from them. It was as if they were her friends. She knew each and every one of them. She had a history with these instruments, some she had known their entire lives, since they were mere pieces of wood or metal, and some offered her more than just companionship, for Melody was the one who, over many years, some say centuries, created the harmonies of healing. I say harmonies singular and not harmonies plural because there was more than one. One harmony helped one kind of person and another helped a different kind of person. You'll understand what I mean as the story unfolds. It had a small sign above the door that simply read "Music Mended," a little wooden door, and a modest window display filled with a lonely violin and a silent drum. It was definitely in need of a fresh coat of paint. If you or I were to visit this charming little repair shop, it would probably definitely take us several visits to truly realize what this unassuming shop in this unassuming village was home to. Some knew her as Melody, but a select few recognized her as the girl who plays the flute. I truly hope you enjoy the story. If you wish the video to conclude at a specific moment, YouTube provides a timer option in its settings. Also, remember to disable autoplay to prevent unwanted ads from upcoming videos. Now, completely let go of yourself as I tell you tonight's sleep story. The girl who plays the flute. In a little village where the wind always seemed to whisper through the trees, just around the corner from the echoing music hall stood a splendid little instrument repair shop. So, allow me to reveal that this instrument repair shop was home to someone and something quite extraordinary. Melody was currently polishing her flute. It was evening time, a cozy twilight hour, and Melody was doing what she loved. This shop was a cozy place filled to the brim with instruments of every kind. But the heart of Melody's world, the source of the fabled harmonies of healing, lay hidden beyond a plain wooden door at the back of the shop. Now, Melody, with her flute in hand, prepared to gather the essence of these sounds. Tonight, as she did every night, she would craft her harmony in readiness for the next person who might come and seek her wisdom. Melody looked up from her work, a mixture of surprise and curiosity lighting up her face. After a few moments of silent wandering, she approached Melody. Melody's surprise was palpable. Many years had passed since anyone last came seeking one of the harmonies of healing. She smiled, a faint, wistful thing that didn't quite reach her weary eyes. Nodding slowly, she gestured for her to follow her. She pushed the door open, revealing the room beyond. This space was cozy, intimate, lit by the soft glow of lanterns hanging from the low ceiling. In the center of the room stood a small wooden table, its surface worn smooth by years of use. Melody moved to a small cabinet, opening its doors to reveal an array of resonant materials, each one integral to creating this particular harmony of healing. Finally, Melody held up the finished flute, now ready to play the notes that would help the old lady in ways she could never imagine. Sometime later, on another misty night, the bell above the door chimed softly as a new visitor stepped into Melody's instrument shop. He approached Melody, who had looked up from her work, always ready to welcome another soul into her haven. Melody, the girl who plays the flute, studied him for a moment. Seeing not just the artist before her, Melody gestured for him to follow, leading him deeper into the shop, past the familiar displays and into the heart of her mystical world. The young artist took the drum, curiosity overcoming his initial resistance. On another night, on yet another misty evening, the door to Melody's instrument shop opened to admit a new visitor. The woman seemed reluctant to speak, but then approached Melody. Melody approached, her demeanor calm. She knew that she could help her. With a motion for her to follow, she led her towards the back of the shop, to the room that had seen the beginnings of many journeys towards calm and rejuvenation. Now Melody selected a different instrument, one designed not just to induce quiet, but to gently wean the mind from its addiction to ceaseless stimuli. The businesswoman accepted the chimes, her expression one of skepticism mixed with a wary hope. As the little village settled into the deep silence of the night, mind still whispering through window panes, we turn our gaze to the homes of those whose lives have been touched by melody in her story. The old woman, her loyal dog now resting peacefully beside her, lay in a peaceful slumber. Across the village, in a small attic room filled with canvases and paint, the young artist slept with a serene expression. Not far away, the businesswoman experienced a quiet unlike any she'd known in recent memory. And above the little instrument shop, in a room that smelled faintly of polished wood,